Hey there, I'm Nicole. Welcome back. Today, I have a confession to make. I am a fiction writer. Now, you probably know that considering this is an AuthorTube channel, but you know something about me that the majority of people in my life do not know. I am a closeted fiction writer. I don't talk about it. I keep it very quiet. My parents will, during quarantine, because I'm living with them, will ask me, "What are you working on over there?" And I will say, "Nothing. It's just, 100,000 word novel that I've been working on for 6 months, but it's nothing." And so today I wanted to dig a little bit into why is it a secret? And why is the thing that I am most scared of to say in my life, well, not most scared of, but one of my biggest fears is going to someone and saying, "I am a writer." So let's get started. There's sort of three things that I want to talk about. The first one is that imposter syndrome, which we've heard of before. It's this idea that you have to be good to be a writer. Now, I also sing. I've done choirs and stuff since I was very little. I've been in at least one choir always, since I was 7. And I'm now 23, so that's a lot of choirs. I've been in a whole bunch, almost 25 or something like that. But when I go up to people, I find it hard to say, "Oh, I'm a singer," because it's the same thing as with being a writer, right? When you spend so much of your life on it and you aren't comfortable or you're too nervous to tell people that you're actually involved in it, then it's sad. And it's part of the reason that I'm on AuthorTube is because I generally don't talk about my writing with the people in my life, which is such a sad thing. And it all goes back to, I think that there's that expectation that we put on ourselves that's not there, that if I say I am a writer, or I have to be at a certain stage of my career, I have to be published, I have to be on the New York Times bestseller list, I have to have like a first draft or a second draft, I have to have worked with an editor, I have to have an agent, all those things. People are like, "Oh, yeah, you are? Well, it's probably not very good. You probably suck." So that's the one thing that makes it so hard, is that it feels like there has to be this kind of like certificate handed to you that, hey, you can now call yourself a writer. But the certificate doesn't exist, unfortunately, and I know, and this is what I'm working on, that no external validation will ever get rid of that imposter syndrome and that feeling that I'm not able to call myself a writer, or I'm not able to call myself a singer or an artist or whatever, that it has to come from an internal commitment to the idea. And that brings me to problem number 2 and why I find it so hard, which is the way that we think of artists and the arts in society. So I am an engineer, and that's been, I'd say, like my primary identity for the past 5 years, mostly because I haven't had time to do very much else, except in the last little bit. It's been, I'm an engineer, and there's this subtle and sometimes not subtle undertone from my engineering schooling. I've been to 2 different schools in the States and in Canada, and there's definitely this subtle undertones that, like, if you're not in STEM, what are you doing? People will say, like, if you're not in STEM, you're not going to get a job. If you do, like, you don't do a business degree or a science degree, like, bye-bye for you, which is very problematic, and I very much disagree with that entire train of thinking. Some of the best classes that I've taken are humanities classes, the classes that I feel like have opened my mind up to just different cultures and different ways of thinking and exploring. One of my favorite classes I ever took was the history of early modern Venice. I took it on exchange in England. It is absolutely no use to anything ever in my life, except when I went to Venice. Thought it was great. But just the experience that I had there was so valuable, which is something that I think we forget, that there is something to be said for learning for learning's sake. There's something to be said for the skills that one learns. Now, if you are not a sciencey person, you're probably like, "What? We didn't know they were thinking this." We're not. It's just these like weird subtle undertones that I've noticed in my programs. There is an even bigger one when it comes to the arts. Somehow, maybe it was the onset of tech, But artists have gone from being like revered people in society, and we still revere like the famous ones, the ones who we view who have done well, to this automatic reaction, like knee-jerk reaction connotation that they're struggling. Over the past little while, in the people around me, I've seen the arts lose a lot of their power and credibility in people's minds, you know? And I think that people forget, I forget sometimes, how important the arts are. There's a place for professional arts, of course. As a singer, I always want to sing with the group that sounds the best, that has the best blend, is doing the most challenging repertoire possible. While there is a place for like the professional, exceptional type arts, there's no reason that the other ones can't be just as powerful and just as meaningful to people. Which you bring back to writing, as someone who writes stories on their computer and never gets published, which, I mean, we all want to get published, like fingers crossed, is their writing and their experience is just as valuable as someone who's doing it full-time for their career. And I know that I've kind of gone off track here a little bit, but I just think that part of the reason of saying you're a writer is because there's been this societal connotation around it. And I think that has kind of developed because the arts are so powerful. They're about creating empathy, they're about telling stories, and empathy is one of our biggest powers for change. And I think that we always have to, just in our minds, guard against the thoughts that the arts they're hobbyists or they're the products of a developed, rich society, because they're not. Dancing has been around since indigenous peoples, and there's traditional dancing in African nations, that have been there for thousands of years. It is so powerful that I think that part of the connotation that's developed around it is almost to hide their power. So one of the reasons to stop being secretive about being a writer is to recognize the power in that. Okay, cool. And then the third thing that I wanted to talk about was why it's so hard to tell people that in my life that I'm a writer is the, oh no, are they gonna make me read something complex? I have never actually had anyone say, ew, no, I don't want to read anything. I've had people say, oh, can I read what you wrote? Like, that's really cool. Like, anytime I've told anybody, they're always like, can I read it? Now, there is genuine and there's not genuine, but for some reason, I have this thought in my head that by telling others that I am a writer, that they will immediately think, oh no, now she's gonna want me to read everything. And I will become a burdensome friend by explaining my hobby or passion project or whatever. Does that make any sense? No. Can you relate? I would love to hear it. And the very last thing, sort of the culmination of all of this, is the reason why I use a pen name on AuthorTube. Not necessarily to hide it from the people in my life, but like partially, but also because it's a day job. Like, my career is amazing. I love my career. I love being an engineer. I love doing the global health work and the mental health, telehealth projects that I'm working on right now through artificial intelligence and applying it to tough problems. Like, it is so cool what I'm doing right now. If I could have planned it, I could not have imagined something that's this fun for me to work on. But I also love writing, so it's just that separation of sort of the hobby you who loves to sing and write versus the professional you who you want people to see on LinkedIn first before they see your AuthorTube videos. Yes, so that's just letting you know that I do have a pen name. Nicole Wilbur is not my real name. Nicole is my middle name. Wilbur is my grandmother's maiden name. Let's get to the end here and start wrapping it up. I guess what I want to say is, have you guys experienced these feelings before? Do you relate? How do you go about just like chatting about books and things you're working on with people in your life? And let's end by just saying all together, we are writers and we are powerful, whether we are published or not. I am a writer, I am a writer, I am a bad word, swear word, writer. See you next time.